Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Preacher. A very good episode with some very interesting developments. One particular thing, obviously, is a lot of the episode is spent, Jesse and Hare kind of talking back and forth about the whole situation, kind of letting Jesse in on like how the operation works, because he makes it seem like he can help Jesse find. Well, he ends up clarifying later on. He's like, I never said I could help you find God. I could help you find, I can help you. But basically, Jesse also meets like one person he ends up meeting later on is like the Pope, as well as some other like high ranking like official when it comes to the church. And they both have two different thoughts on what happened with God. One side thinks like, oh, it was seraphims, rogue angels who are scared, who want to take God's position. And basically, God is on the run from them. And then the other one is like, no, God is kind of wanting to do a whole like recreation thing, which has always kind of been my thing of like, oh yeah, most likely God's kind of done with like Earth and everything, so he wanted to try something else. And so it's just kind of interesting hearing those both perspectives. Maybe it's a combination of the two. I mean, you never know. But like I said, I think it's kind of interesting because the Pope's like thought is kind of where my mind was initially with why God would just up and go missing. But Jesse's like, okay, so literally no one knows. And I love that the fact is the Pope is like, oh, I heard from one of my sources. So they're getting a lot of this information from other people. It's like, how does that whole thing work in like, the religious hierarchy of like, how did they obtain this type of information? Side note too, we end up finding out kind of another thing too, that heaven and the Grail have been working together for millennia. So I guess like, maybe it's an organization that would like, I'm still wondering I'm curious to know how did that start? Like, what really, maybe the apostles started that, especially because in this episode we kind of learned about Jesus a lot in this episode, which I'll get to in a second. But now I'm sitting here thinking about, because initially I was like, maybe it was started by angels and that happened. Maybe angels came to humans and was like, yo, we need your cooperation in this whole situation, so you help us, we'll help you. And that's how the Grail was started. So it seems like it is like a very, 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 very old organization. At the very least, I guess I would have immediately thought like medieval times at the very least, because of the Grail, when it comes to like art. Isn't that part of the Arthur mythology, the Holy Grail and stuff like that? But nevertheless, like I figured that was kind of like what that was derived from, but now it seems like it's even older than that. Not unless the Holy Grail is even older than that, because I always associate it with Arthur, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is just like a religious thing. But nevertheless, maybe it was the apostles themselves, because it was kind of interesting. At first I was like, okay, what's up with this whole like sex scene at the beginning? We're seeing this person you see the silhouettes kind of doing all this different stuff, and then eventually I'm like, is this supposed to be Jesus? And it turns out it's Jesus. And like they make him such a bro. He's like, yeah, I love you. And the lady's like, wait, what are you talking? Wait, what? And he's like, yeah, but we can't tell anyone about what happened here. Are you cool with that? And she's like, yeah. He's like, cool. He's like such a bro that kind of like caught me off guard. Also, the fact is Jesus is having an affair with a married woman. I know like there's a few things here and there I know about from the Bible. But that's the thing. The Bible is crazy with some of the stuff that goes down in it. So I'm wondering like, is there some validity to that or not? Or is that just 100% fiction? It's most like 100% fiction, but still, that'd be kind of interesting if that was the case. No, it's definitely fiction, now that I'm thinking about it, because the whole, like, affairs are kind of, like, frowned upon in the Bible and stuff like that, from my, like, the little bit I know about it. But nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting. Once again, it's kind of interesting, kind of pointing this out. We've seen more of the heavenly side of things. We've never seen like the more demonic side of things. We've seen angels and stuff and the more heavenly side, but we have not seen like demons and stuff like that. We know they exist because that's what Genesis is. Genesis is half angel, half demon. So we've yet to cross paths with them. It seems like even most of heaven still isn't, and that's another element that still hasn't come up either. Most of heaven still is probably unaware that Genesis is going. Like the only people who know are the blonde and viewers. I'm surprised that hasn't come into a thing. And I guess that's why hell hasn't really reacted either, because they don't know that Genesis is on the loose. There's probably people who are going to want Genesis dead because they don't want the other side to have it. But there's also some people on both sides who's going to want Genesis so they can use it for themselves because it's too powerful for just one person to have, but someone's going to try and take advantage of it. But nevertheless, we end up finding out more about this whole Jesus situation. I feel so bad for Jesus's baby mama, because because he ended up conceiving she ended up conceiving their child, and afterwards is immediately murdered. That sucks. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about it more and more, like it's definitely the apostles that started the Grail, because they've been tasked with protecting Jesus's bloodline, and Jesse ends up meeting like the current one, whose name is Humperdew. He's like Jesus's 25th grandson, and it was like the moment I was like inbreeding, right? And even Hare kind of confirms it later on. It's like they've been doing, it's their way of keeping the Jesus bloodline pure, because if they did, like Jesus' bloodline would whittle down little by little over the generation. Like I said, it's been like, I mean, that's his grandson, 25th grandson, so it's like, I guess you would double that, I guess, and make it so it's been like 50 generations. I guess that counts. Could you double it, I would think? So it's been like 50 generations, so that bloodline would be very thinned out. So, but nevertheless, like, it's understandable. I mean, at least like from their perspective, like you get like why they did it, because it's not, because they kind of bring it up like that's what royal families have done in the past, of like, yeah, just to make sure that their bloodline stays as strong as possible, because the stronger your bloodline is, the kind of more validity is to your power, essentially, and your rank and your position and your social status and stuff like that. So it makes sense. But what caught me by surprise with this whole situation is the fact is that it would, like, I thought, so this whole thing would be about Jesse taking the place of God. Did not realize it was actually going to be Hare. I don't know why it's going to be Hare who actually suggested it to Jesse. And honestly, Jesse was actually like appalled by it. He's like, no, there's only one and only true God, and he's like, I will find him. But Hare's like, because like for him, he's like, yeah, the fact is knowing, Humperdew, and to see who Humperdew is, and as well as seeing like, working at the shop for 13 years, he got, disenchanted, because he's just like, oh no, like this, like when the time comes for like him to rise up and lead us, he's going to be the one to lead us. But he's like, but seeing Jesse, and I loved how he explained it too. He's like, I was sodomized, a bunch of people came to my room, you have Jesse look at him like that, and he's just like, that's beside the point. But I was wondering what he took an interest in Jesse for, and it's like seeing what Jesse can do is like, you with that thing inside of you, I wonder if they know what he has inside of him, or do they just think that it's like they know it's something inside him, but I don't know if they know. Once again, it's like it's heaven and hell's big secret, so no one's supposed to know about it. So but it's so interesting that for him, it's like, no, Jesse, you're the perfect candidate, especially with what you can do. And for Hare to be like all for it, like, yeah, you could be, So it is feeding into what I brought up last episode. My mindset was it's either going to be one or two things. Either Jesse at the end of it is going to be leading the Grail, or the fact of the matter is that he's going to become like the next god, which I guess arguably you could say it's literally the same thing. They go hand in hand. Becoming one kind of leads to the other one. So, because him becoming the next god would be about leading, not just the Grail, but others as well. But I guess like the Grail will be kind of his loyal subject. So, but it seems like a very interesting thing in this episode that, because I was constantly worried, because obviously you see the whole Jenny or Featherstone situation, like she's getting close to Tulip and everything, and it's like she made sure to get to Tulip at a very opportune time, because Tulip's still having her nightmares about the Saint, as well as she doesn't really have anyone to talk to. Jesse's kind of away and still not really being 100% helpful, and Cassidy's kind of doing his own thing with Dennis and the ladies. So Featherstone shows up just to kind of as like oh yeah, I can help you out and everything, trying to be friendly to her, trying to help her out and everything. It does seem like she is purposely trying to break them up, because like Tulip's got a reservation. She's like, oh yeah, she got a feeling that something's off, and Featherstone, quote unquote Jenny, keeps pushing for her, and eventually, like when it came to the tile in the bathroom and everything, she's like, oh, maybe you should fix that. I was like, oh, does she know? Because like she was tapping on it before. I was like, oh, I thought she would find the guns or whatever. And then me being the idiot I am, I finally realized, I was like, right, of course they would know where the guns are. They know where all of the not just the guns, because I forgot that the Saint sword was in there too. But nevertheless, his weapons. I was like, right, they tapped the entire house, so they saw when Jesse put those weapons up. So they did get a look at the Saint, so they are aware of him too. I mean, granted, they don't know where Jesse probably put him, but that's why she was able to say it with such confidence. She's like, oh, do you know for sure? It's like the house was tapped, so they know for sure that the Saint's still alive and everything. So, and they probably also know the reason why Jesse kept him alive, kept him from going to hell. But it's kind of an interesting thing seeing how it's the point is to break them up, and I think on multiple levels, because for one, it's supposed to put Jesse in a position where he has no one to rely on, so that he has no choice but to go to the Grail. Because even Jesse's like, yeah, I have friends who will help me, and then Hare's like, really? You do? He's like, yeah. So it seems like that's the point, to build a wedge between them, so they end up dividing up, and then you can have Jesse alone and having no choice and no one else to rely on, because he can't do this on his own, and eventually he would have to turn to the Grail. It seems like that might be the point. It's actually kind of interesting too, like how interesting Featherstone is the more and more we see of her, like getting to really know her when she's not playing, as the singer, or she's playing as Jenny. Like the fact that she's very cold, because she's like, oh my, I wish I could have just killed Tulip. It's just like, but orders are orders. We're not here to question orders. I do like that whole setup thing of like, she called Hoover and had him pretend to be her abusive boyfriend, and then Tulip came and bashed him with the guitar from Guitar Hero, which is so cool. That it's just interesting. The fact is, it's just a little thing for them to show that she's very good at that. She's like super good at that too, and she enjoys it. But nevertheless, ended up breaking over his back and knocking him down, and then Hoover's just on the floor, and she's like, no, don't. I was like, oh man, you don't want Tulip to hurt him too bad. She's like, let me get in a few shots, and you see Hoover kind of look up at her. It's like she's fine with playing along with it, just because if it means serving her purpose, then she's okay with it. It's kind of interesting because she later on kind of is like, oh, you're wincing like a little girl. You're up here complaining about, ooh, my side hurts, boo, kind of tearing him down a little bit, which is sad. Once again, kind of showing you like what kind of person she is compared to Hoover. Like I said, Hoover's just kind of like, yeah, I believe in the cause, I guess. He seems super like, yeah. She's all for it though. She's willing to do whatever she needs to for the cause. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. She did slip up, which kind of is why she needed that distraction and everything, was because she slipped up and mentioned Dallas, and then she tried to play on Tulip and be like, oh, you were a little emotional earlier. You don't know what you probably told me. It's like, you're so right. I mean, that shows you the good side and downside of who Featherstone is. She's so good at her job that she was well versed on everything there is to know about Tool. But knowing so much about your subject like that, you get so much information jumbled up in your head, and you forget like what that person told you, or rather what you know on your own. So kind of an amateur move there, but it almost got her caught. Luckily, she was able to kind of pull back from it and save the day. So she also said that line where I actually thought maybe there was some truth to it, where she's like, oh my God, I think Cassidy's actually kind of sexy and interesting. I like guys like him or something. It's like, huh. It's like, no, once again, it's just like, it's so interesting when you cut from her being Jenny to her being her real stuff. You do see occasions like when her Tool is back at her, you see the look on her face like, oh God, I'm disgusted having to play this role. Like, she's very like one-dimensional when she's herself. So it's just kind of interesting seeing her character flip-flop like that when she's playing a role, just how drastically she changes, just how easily, like, it's almost like she has no personality herself. She's just kind of a robot, but then she kind of feigns humanity when the time comes, and I think that's just so interesting. So the question is, what is going to happen next episode, considering the fact is that Tulip did find the weapons? She's not going to be happy about that. What's that mean for Jesse? I kind of caught a sneak peek of a certain thing. I won't talk about it, but it connects to that, so it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, once again, like, Jesse, I think no matter what the situation is, Jesse still lied to her about it. It's such a big thing. He knows how much she's freaking out about this, and he lied about it. If he had told her the truth from the beginning, like, yeah, I couldn't send him away, yeah, because the soul I put inside of him was my own, so... But now it does seem like that is going to be a big thing going forward. It's going to be they're creating that divide between them. And I'm guessing the moment they're separated, once Jesse's kind of on his own, that's when Hero will probably give the order, and then like Featherstone's going to be like, yes, I can take her down, which I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be the other way down. The moment Tulip finds out, oh, what you're all about, she's going to take you down, because I legitimately think she underestimates Tulip, because I don't think she's ever seen Tulip in action, which is kind of interesting too. I forgot to mention this earlier. It's a whole situation that Tulip told her everything, about like Genesis and the Saint and everything. And it's like, huh, it's kind of interesting because it's like in this world, it's hard to tell whether everyone accepts everything or not. It's like it's one of those things like like in season 1 with the whole like God situation, the fake, it was Mark, playing the role of God, but still like everyone accepted that. No one was like, oh, is this some hologram or some fake thing or something? It's like no, everyone just accepted it. So it's one of those things, and like it makes you wonder in like the preacher world, is everyone just kind of like, yeah, that's a thing, I accept it. Oh man, killer cowboy from hell. Oh man, that's where it's like why would she accept that so easily? But at the same time, it's like there have been people who've popped up in this universe, who need like, oh, I need you to show me what this is all about. To let me know what you're all about is true. I don't know. I'm curious to know like where that line is. I mean, it's not necessary to know. I'm just curious because it's just so interesting why Tulip didn't catch on to that. It's like she accepted that pretty damn easily, but I guess it's like, maybe that's just kind of the world of Preacher, or maybe it's just kind of like oh man, you're a good friend. You believe me. You haven't think I'm crazy or something like that, So I don't know. It might just be the former, not the latter, or maybe it might be the former and the latter together. Either way. Another thing that popped up this episode, it's a continuing thing, is the whole Dennis situation. We see him kind of biting into a lady later on in the episode. Like him, Dennis, and Cassidy are living up. They're having fun and everything. But you do see Cassidy having his reservations about the situation because he sees a photo and Dennis had bitten a lady, because he just told him like, you have all these feelings springing up. You got an appetite. You know what appetite I'm talking about. Like basically don't give in to it. We can't, once again, his rule to Dennis was don't drink blood on the regular. The only time to drink blood is when you need to heal your wounds. That's the only time. But once again, it seems like Dennis is not caring. We saw him at the end of the episode walking into their place, like blood on his clothes and on his chin. So he doesn't care. And it's what the dude's name, Seamus, the guy that Cass had talked about before he did this. It seems like most likely what he said was kind of true, like, oh, do you know his temperament and everything? And it seems like I said, Dennis's personality is kind of being overwhelmed by the flood of emotions and the hunger and everything that comes from being a vampire. And I'm very curious to see like how Cassidy will handle this in the future. For now, it's just kind of like, oh, he's on good terms with his son. They're having fun together. They're making up for lost time to a certain degree. It's like, plus it kind of compensates for the loneliness that he's felt because he has someone else like him. Because even amongst the group, even with the weird people that are in their group, Tulip being her own, like being the weird badass that she is. Because even, you can argue Tulip's weird in her own way, just like Jesse is, because he's just kind of got his own weird circumstances. Plus, the fact that matters, he's got Genesis, so it's not like he's a normal person either. And you have Cassidy being a vampire, but even amongst them, he's still kind of a freak amongst them, So he's kind of alone in that whole situation. Now he has Dennis, so I guess it kind of compensates, so he doesn't have to feel so alone anymore. Especially because him and Dennis have never really been around each other. Granted, we still don't know at what point in Dennis's life Cassidy left. Like the only time we saw the interaction was with Dennis as a baby. So it's like that doesn't tell you. I mean, maybe that's supposed to represent the fact is that he left immediately for whatever reason. Still don't know why, but maybe that's something we'll kind of delve into later on as we kind of progress this relationship even further. But I am curious to see what goes down. It could arguably end up being either Jesse or Cassidy who might ultimately have to put Dennis down, or maybe it's going to be a situation where like they try to kill him, but Dennis gets away, and so it's like he's kind of off on his own, kind of doing his like arguably his Jack the Ripper thing or something like that. Of like, I don't know. I'm curious to see, because it could easily be Jesse, because Jesse's like, oh, this is too much attention we're drawing to ourselves. Like, you got to stop him. But then, that will kind of create a divide between, that might be what arguably creates the divide between Cass and Jesse, is the fact is the whole Dennis situation is like, you got to get Dennis under control. It's like, don't tell me how to raise my son. Or it's like, oh, you haven't raised your son before now. Don't pretend like you're a good father to you now. How dare you? And then at the same time, it could be like, Cassidy could be like, well, you didn't help me out when I needed you to help me out, you piece of crap. So that, and I'm sure, the Grill is going to, Hoover and Featherstone are probably going to make that even worse. Much like they're going to break up Tulip and Tulip and Jesse, I'm sure they're going to try and do even more so. And there's probably, let's not forget, there's probably recordings of Cassidy and Tulip talking about their situation, which Jesse suspicious about with certain aspects, but like I don't think he doesn't know, but I'm sure he has his suspicions and stuff like that, the way they, But I don't know. Like I said, a very, very good episode, and it's definitely going to get very, very interesting in the next episode. These new developments. I mean, for now, Jesse's all for the idea of not being the next god, you know, that there only being one god. But, you know, he kind of got disappointed when he met the quote unquote Messiah, who's to say the same thing won't happen when he meets God, that God won't disappoint him, and then he'll decide, you know, hey, I'm done. Oh, you know, I spent so much time worshiping you. You're not worth it. You're not a good creator. Maybe God will say something to piss him off, and, you know. Arguably, the question is, too, would Genesis work on God? I mean, pretty much see it works on everyone, which also shows you, too. That was kind of a thing I was wondering, too. Would it work on Hair? Because I was like, maybe Hair doesn't have a soul. It turns out he has a soul. It might be as weird and messed up that he is, but he still has a soul since Genesis worked on him and everything. So I'm also curious to see, will that come up any more throughout the series, or is the Saint the anomaly, the only one that kind of walks around without a soul? I'm curious. I feel like the fact that he introduced that concept means even if it's not this season, at least later on down the road, that's probably going to be something that Jesse crosses path with, because that's kind of like the ultimate weapon against Genesis. I mean, plus, you know, not being able to hear him, but that's another thing where it's like you don't even have to worry about blocking off your ears. You can just not have a soul, you know. So I mean, we'll just see, you know. And that's still another question too of like, how much of a difference? I'm still waiting for it, because I know that's going to that has significance of like that 1% of his soul being missing. Like, ultimately, will it be anything? At least the entire time I've been thinking and talking like it is, yin yang, all the, like, you know, imbalance in the soul and everything, but like that. But ultimately, maybe that 1% won't matter. To Jesse, it might. Maybe for him, it's like he needs a complete soul just because he does feel off, or maybe, you know, it's like for him, it's like he can only get into heaven, like, or maybe it's just like, I don't want a piece of crap human like the Saint to have even a fraction of my own soul, you know. So maybe something like that. I don't know, like I said, we'll just kind of have to wait to kind of see if, you know, if anything comes of any of that, so, or how Jesse progresses, you know, in the next episodes with everything, the Grail wanting him to be next god. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.